Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Curious Case Files. I'm Danielle.
I'm Lisa.
And I'm Jamie.
Today we're delving into the mysterious and, in our opinion, unsolved crime centered around a 6-year-old boy named Max, his rich divorced parents, his father's live-in girlfriend of 3 years, and, for lack of a better word, a very strange uncle.
Yep.
We'll discuss 2 deaths that lead to many unanswered questions and reveal to you the facts and circumstances surrounding it all. So please join us as we present the enigmatic case and death of little Max Shacknai and Rebecca Zahow. Rebecca Zahow was born March 15, 1979, in Phalom, a small town in the Chin Hills in northwestern Burma, now Myanmar. Her father, Kwa Hin Tang, and mother, Zung Tinpar, or Pari, had 6 children in total, and in Burma, they were actually considered royalty. But after the British military seized power in 1962, they hid members of royalty from public view, worried that nostalgia for royals might threaten the army's tight hold on the country. These turbulent circumstances within the country meant the family had to eventually flee Burma and lived in Germany and Nepal before ultimately settling in the United States.
Not much is known about Rebecca's early life. By all accounts, she had a happy life with nothing of significance except when her family had to leave Burma. She was raised in a Christian family, and that's how Rebecca identified as an adult. She grew up to become an ophthalmic technician in a doctor's office, and apparently she loved her job. She met and married Neil Nalepa in 2002. Nalepa was a nursing student in Scottsdale, Arizona at the time, and the two soon fell for each other. However, tensions within the marriage soon surfaced, and one day in 2008, a man by the name of Jonah Shacknai came to her office for an eye exam, and the two began an affair, whilst she was still married. In August 2009, Zahow was arrested for shoplifting under the name Rebecca Nalepa. She pleaded guilty to stealing $1,000 worth of jewels from Macy's in Phoenix, Arizona. She gave up her job in December 2010, and that is the extent of what we know about her prior to the events of today's case.
Jonah Shacknai was born on 24th of November 1960 in Scottsdale, Arizona. He has one brother, Adam. He started his own business in 1988 with his friend John Holliday. This company, Medicis Pharmaceutical, turned him into a multimillionaire and then a billionaire. This was due to a product called Restylane, which is an injectable filler for the cosmetic industry. That is unique because, and I quote, it is made up using non-animal sourced hyaluronic acid. It is basically derived from neural tissue. So if it's non-animal sourced, what does that leave?
Well, human, which would be fetal tissue.
What sort? What sort? Jonah has been married twice. He married his first wife, Kimberly James, a pharmaceutical sales rep for a rival company, Johnson & Johnson, in 1993. However, the pair later parted ways in 1999 due to irreconcilable differences. During his divorce from his first wife, a psychologist said he was defensive and could have some unresolved anger problems. But he added, "It was quite apparent to me that his children are most important to him and he loves them dearly." At the time of their divorce in 2001, Jonah and Kimberly had 2 children, a 14-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy, Jaleesa and Ryneel, according to some sources that we could not verify, who would be 24 and 23 respectively. By 2011, at the time of the incidents with their younger brother Max and father's partner Rebecca Zahow. He married his second wife, Dina Flores, in 2002, and the couple had one child, Max, in 2005. They divorced 3 years later in 2008. He shortly thereafter began dating Rebecca.
Police reports detail a bitter end to the marriage of Jonah and Dina. Documents released shortly after Max's death catalog 2 incidents, which include 16 photographs of bruises and scratches provided by Dina. These injuries were purported to have been inflicted by Jonah's dog. On September 13, 2008, Jonah reported to the police that Dina attempted to choke him and that his attack dog, female German Shepherd attacked Dina in his defense. Jonah blamed Dina's behavior on prescription medications and alcohol, according to a supplemental report.
Why would you have an attack-trained dog?
I would imagine maybe their wealth, and I don't, as a watchdog, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Dina called the police the same night to report the dog attack, and she told police that the dog had injured her before and that Jonah never made any effort to stop the dog. Dina also submitted a 2-page letter describing Jonah as temperamental. She claimed that the incident began over an argument of Max soiling the bed and that Jonah had cursed at her in front of the child. He physically intimidated her, she wrote, by coming very close to her, nose to nose, and continuing to insult and threaten her with name-calling and a menacing tone. She added that her attempts to keep an arm's distance from Jonah during the incident resulted in her hand moving from his chest to his throat. Although Jonah feels entitled to name-call, push, etc., when I attempt to set boundaries via my personal space, he then assumes the role of victim, Dina wrote.
Sounds like a very toxic relationship.
It does. Some characteristics that might fall into place later.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like there was a history of violence. Weeks later, in a formal letter to Chief John Bennett of the Paradise Valley Police Department, dated January 26, Jonah wrote that Dina previously filed false and misleading reports about bruises on her body stemming from contact with their dog. Importantly, Schack now wrote, Dina has been treated medically for years for a bruising disorder whereby the slightest contact with an object or other material causes bruises. This information can certainly be verified medically. Now, huge red flag there, like a little domestic incident where the dogs hurt her, and he's writing to the chief of police.
Yeah.
Clearly got a relationship. That's going to be important later as well. Jonah wrote that although never feeling physically endangered, Dina physically assaulted him several times, once causing him a broken finger. Again, toxic. He wrote that Dina threw herself at his car on January 4th while he was attempting to drive away from the home. She screamed that he had no right to leave her or the house. At this point, Dina also began attempting to slap me, again screaming, "You cannot leave me," Jonah continued. I was able to gently nudge her from the car and withdraw from the premises without further incident. No charges were filed in either incident. And just quickly, before we continue, why would somebody with a bruising disorder that the slightest little touch is going to cause injuries to their body throw themselves in front of a car?
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense.
As you'll find out, I mean, that's a recurring theme here, that people seem to be doing things that they shouldn't be doing or wouldn't do. But, Rebecca and Jonah lived in Phoenix, Arizona, and spent their winters in his Coronado home, the Spreckles mansion. Jonah, who is Jewish, was not overly religious, so Rebecca stopped attending church services during her relationship with him, but still held her religion and relationship with God in high regard. She became the stepmother to young Max and eventually gave up her job. They enjoyed an extravagant lifestyle, ate healthily, and were both keen on fitness. According to an interview in 2018 on Breaking Homicide, Max's mother Dina said of Rebecca and Max's relationship, quote, "I didn't see that Rebecca had that kind of animosity towards Max."
Yeah.
Yep. On July 11th, 2011, Rebecca, Jonah, and Rebecca's younger sister, Zena, 13, and Max, 6, were staying at the Spreckles mansion. Jonah was out of the house at the gym, and according to Rebecca's account at the time, she had visited the bathroom downstairs, and Zena was in another bathroom showering when she heard a loud noise, which at the time she thought was either a crash or a barking dog. The family had a dog named Ocean.
There's a big difference between a crash and a dog barking.
Generally, yeah.
You wouldn't think, oh, it's a crash or a dog. You know,
it makes you wonder why she thought it was that. I don't know if the muffled sound of being in the bathroom, but you would think that those were two different distinct sounds.
Yeah. They're very distinct. It's a bit of a weird thing.
She emerged from the bathroom to find that 6-year-old Max was laying on the floor in the foyer beside the staircase, badly injured, of course, with Razor Scooter lying on his shin and a broken chandelier lying next to him. She called for Zena and told her to call 911, which she did, and the first officer on the scene reported that Zahau had told him Max had been conscious when she initially discovered him and said one word, ocean. By the time the emergency services arrived, he was then unconscious, and Rebecca Zahau was also allegedly overheard by the EMTs saying to Zena, Dina is going to kill me. Now, if you recall, Dina is Max's mother.
Yeah. A lot of people have put weight into that, like it's like, it must have been Dina.
Yeah. But it is a figure of speech, right?
Yeah.
And something tragic just happened. So the first thing coming to your mind is the mother is going to kill me.
I think anybody would say that. If you're in charge and you're like the only adult in the house with somebody else's child and that child has an accident, you're like, they're going to kill me.
Right.
It's not, I mean, they're like literally going to kill you.
And it's a bit strange that they mentioned ocean as well, because and not a lot of people picked up on that. But that means that was said for a reason, but we don't know exactly why.
Yeah.
But we did look into that, didn't we? Because we thought perhaps Ocean was the attack trained dog.
The German Shepherd, but it's not.
Apparently, it's some other wiener dog thing. Wiener.
Yeah, it's not.
Wiener Schnitzel.
It's a Weimaraner or something like that. It's called. It's a hunting dog.
Where did I get Wiener Schnitzel from?
No.
You just got it in your head. That
I've just made up a whole new breed of dog.
Yeah, it's not a hot dog. It's not the wiener dog. It's a hunting dog, and it has the body. Lisa, I think you pointed out, almost like a greyhound.
Yeah, I thought when you said that, I thought it was like a sausage dog.
Yeah, no. So, but apparently it wasn't the attack dog, the German Shepherd, anyway. So the statement has caused a lot of speculation over the events that unfolded in the coming days. However, this is typical response and a figure of speech, like we said. Dina's going to kill me. The mom's going to kill me. We do not believe that this has any relevance. It doesn't implicate Dina or suggest Rebecca was foreshadowing the events that were to come. No. Jonah was called in and informed of his son's accident and arrived at the house to accompany Max to the hospital. He also informed Dina.
Max was taken by ambulance to Sharp Coronado Hospital Emergency Department and was found to have head trauma. He was then transferred to Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego. The pediatrician at the time informed his parents that the injuries may have indicated suffocation. It was also noted that Max had had a heart attack. The following information is from his medical records. Now, I'm not going to read this to you. You can feel free to pause it and read that because that will take ages. Just to quickly go over. We have, if you look at the picture just next to the text there, it says that he's got abrasions and scrapes on his back. The next one down, you've got a frontal facial impact resulted in backward movement of the head and hyperextension of the neck. He had abrasions and contusions on his face and a frontal skull fracture. It also mentions in there that he had something called decorticate posturing, and that means that his hands were turned inwards, his arms were folded in, and his feet and legs were extended out. And that's something that's apparently common with head injuries. Right. There's a lot more information if you wanted to just quickly pause the screen and read that. Oh, but it's got a lot of huge words in it that I'm probably going to pronounce wrong, so I'm not going to read it to you. So
yeah, it's very, very medical. A lot of medical.
Sorry, because it's very doctory, and I'm not even going to try.
Doctory.
So yeah, doctory. That's a new word.
There seem to be a lot of different things going on with him there, isn't there, with the injuries. I know, every fella's, he's going to have different injuries, but. It just seems a bit bizarre to me.
And even the heard about a heart attack. I mean, how unusual that a boy would suffer a heart attack, unless, of course, the impact of falling from that might have caused it. And who knows if he inherited anything from his mother regarding this bruising issue, which often involved, I think, platelet issues as well.
That's quite a good point, actually. If she had something that's medically documented, perhaps he had it as well.
Yeah.
We don't know, unfortunately. Right, so how was Max injured? Well, according to the official investigation, it is purported that Max was playing on his Razor scooter on the first floor of the mansion. and had gone over the banister, hitting the chandelier on the way down, causing it to fall also, and then land on the floor of the foyer below. His death was officially ruled an accident. There has been a lot of speculation over whether his death was in fact an accident. His mother believes he was murdered, but she does not believe it was Rebecca who did so. The main argument that this was not an accident is that had he gone over the top railing, his centre of gravity would have been off. However, where the banister rail begins to go diagonally down the stairs, there's a sharp decline in height. Had he gone over here, it is possible that this was an accident.
Yeah, and that is on screen at the moment. We've got
Yeah.
what they purport happened. And if I just go back to the previous picture, you can see here that it is quite high, the
is quite
railing
high.
on the landing.
Mhm.
But as it goes onto the first step, there's a steep incline. So that had he went over or like went flying towards the gap at the top of the stairs, it's quite possible that he could have went over there,
Possibly.
diagonally falling down. Obviously, that's just speculation, but
Yeah, because I think that we saw, or according to what we had found out, that his height would not have been tall enough to have fallen over that banister at a mid level, like they
yeah,
said.
not if he was on the landing and you had like the full height. But I mean that part that I don't know. There's no measurements, but that does look like quite a big drop. So you're losing quite a lot of height there just at that on that first step down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So had he went sort of that way, it is possible.
But then we don't know how fast he was going on his scooter. We don't know if this ocean was mentioned. Perhaps the dog was involved in the accident, maybe got in the way or something
Yeah,
like
we've
that.
got. I mean, I shouldn't imagine you can get that fast on a carpeted landing.
No.
But I mean, perhaps a dog did knock him over.
I mean, it's possible. And he was a little boy. He was 6 years old. Was he trying to be a little daredevil on the stairs, or on the railing, the banister coming down?
Had he climbed it? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's speculation as to how this happened. And there was no cameras to show. So they went according to their little models that we showed you previously.
Yeah.
In the aftermath of Max's accident, Rebecca's younger sister, Zena, was sent home early. She was supposed to stay with Rebecca, Jonah, and Max for at least another week, but was put on a flight home the next day. The family dog, Ocean, was put in a kennel by Rebecca because the family was otherwise engaged between the hospital visits, etc., going back and forth, and obviously weren't going to be able to take care of the dog. So the dog, Ocean, was taken out of the picture and put into a kennel. And the day after the incident, Dina Shacknai's twin sister, Nina Romano, flew in from San Francisco along with her teenage son. The following is Nina's recollection as published in Town and Country on April 4th, 2018, which was about 7 years later after the fact. Once in the car, Nina recalls, "I looked at her and said, 'Rebecca, what happened? I don't understand.' And she looked at me and said, 'I know.' I said, 'I heard that Max had a heart attack and fell down the stairs. Where did he fall from? The first landing? The second landing?' She said. 'He fell from the bedroom,' she said, 'twice.' She wasn't giving me any details. I said, 'I don't understand this. He's a healthy young boy.' And she looked at me and said, 'Can you read directions?' and handed me her phone. When Nina arrived at the hospital, she tried to tell her sister that Rebecca was acting strange, but Dina was preoccupied with her son, which obviously who wouldn't be at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to her, but I mean, a recollection of an exact conversation, word for word, 7 years later, I'm not going to put
7
much
years.
weight.
And
Yeah.
also, if Rebecca was sort of stressed and shocked at the time, she may not quite made sense, because she might
Yeah.
be flushed, not thinking right, her mind's elsewhere and things like that, or maybe just didn't want to talk about it at the moment, while she's concentrating driving. But
Yeah.
Yeah, to say that she was acting strange completely falls into line with what she'd just been through. So it's hard to say.
I wouldn't. I mean, you're not going to remember word for word every single thing that somebody said 7 years ago,
Right.
for a whole conversation. So it's not. I don't think that would be admissible in court, really, either. 7 years later, if it had been a statement she'd made at the time, then maybe, but not
yeah.
not
Yeah.
that much time.
Too much time goes by. Yeah.
So the following day, so we're now 2 days after Max was injured, Jonah Shacknai's brother Adam arrived from Memphis, Tennessee. Rebecca also picked him up from the airport. That evening, Adam, Jonah, and Rebecca had dinner at the fish market restaurant. Rebecca is said to have ate little and been silent for most of the meal. After dinner, Jonah returned to his room at the Ronald McDonald House in the grounds of the hospital, whilst Adam and Rebecca returned to the Spreckles mansion. Adam stayed in the guest house behind the main property, whilst Rebecca was in the 27-room mansion alone. According to Adam's deposition, he wished her a good night, called his girlfriend, took an Ambien, and went to bed at around 8 p.m.
Seems early.
Very early.
Seems
is he
early.
5? Is he 5? I mean,
Yeah.
do people do that? Go to bed at 8 p.m.?
I mean, I suppose, but it just seems.
And apparently he
unusual.
slept for 10 hours. Is that normal as well? I mean, I don't know. We don't have Ambien in the UK, but I mean, does it? Because if I put you out for 10 hours, can I have some, please? Because I've got sleep issues.
Ambien does different things to different people, so it's going to affect them differently. I don't know. Obviously, we're not doctors. We don't know his history, his
It'd be
medical
interesting to
history.
know if it was prescribed or if it was just. Can you buy it over the counter?
I'm not sure on that. I think it's prescribed only.
Yeah. That's a bit of a weird time for a grown man to go to bed, though.
Seems like it.
In my opinion, don't come for me. If you are a grown man and you go to bed at 8 o'clock, then whatever floats your boat. Jamie, continue on the story and save me. I'm digging a hole here.
Yeah. When Adam Shacknai awoke around 6 a.m. on the morning of July 14th, he claims he decided to go to the main house for coffee. According to Adam, as he walked towards the main house, he saw Rebecca hanging from the balcony. She was completely naked, her feet were bound together, her hands were tied behind her back, and she had a gag in her mouth. The following is the 911 call Adam made at 6:48 a.m. upon making this gruesome discovery. Listen carefully as there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
Clear on emergency, what are you reporting?
Yeah, I got a girl hung herself in the guest house of, it's on Ocean Boulevard across from the hotel, same place that you came and got the kid yesterday.
Okay, sir, what is the address?
I'm not sure, the back house is 1928 something. I'm not sure. Let me call you back.
Okay, sir, is she
Yeah.
still alive?
I don't know.
Okay.
Are you alive? No.
Yes, sir.
Did you get the address?
No, sir, I need the address.
She came here yesterday to pick up a little boy.
Okay, sir, I wasn't working yesterday. I don't know what you're talking
Check your
about.
records.
Sir, I checked all of the records yesterday. I can't find anything on Ocean Boulevard. Can you tell me what the address is?
I'm looking. Just start sending them towards the hotel.
Okay, I understand that. I just need the exact address. I can't help you until I have the address.
1043 Ocean Boulevard.
1043 Ocean? Okay,
Yeah.
is she still alive?
I don't think so.
Okay, let me get the
Just
fire
somebody out here,
department. Sir, hang on. Let me get the fire department on the phone to help you, okay? Hang on just a minute.
Come on.
Fire medical emergency? Coronado with a transfer. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, hi,
Got a lady that's hung herself.
what's the address?
1043 Ocean Boulevard.
1043 Ocean Boulevard?
Yeah.
Okay, what's wrong?
She hung herself, man. I woke up.
Okay, is this a house?
It's a house. Yeah.
Okay, how old is she?
I'd say about 30.
30? Okay. When was the last time you saw her?
Last night.
Okay, is she beyond help?
Well, give me some. I'm compressing her chest right now.
Okay, hold on.
What the
So
hell? I put my 30 not to
what's your name?
Adam Shacknai.
Okay, I have help on the way. What's your cell phone number? Is it 901-485?
901-485.
Okay, listen to me. Help is coming right now, okay? And Peter, you're on the way?
Yes, we are.
Okay, and you're right there with her. Did you cut her down?
Yes, I did.
Okay, just stay with me.
So, just like he left off, there is a lot to unpack there. And one of the things that I thought of right away was the fact that he was going to the main house for coffee. When this is a mansion, right? This is a 27-room mansion, we heard. And you got the guest house in the back. Given the money that these people have, and it's speculation, but I just find it hard to believe that guest house wouldn't be fully stocked with anything and everything a person needs.
Coffee and making facilities everywhere.
Coffee.
So,
I think that does actually just sound like a reason for him to been in that location. That's what it sounds like.
right, like something made up. But there was a lot going on. And if you read, or as you listened and heard in that 911 call, he comes out and says, there's a girl here. Now he knows who Rebecca is, and this is his brother's girlfriend.
Yeah, he's quite well aware of what her name is.
Yeah, so it just seems really strange for him to be acted like he just discovered this body of a stranger. There's a girl here.
Yeah. First thing out of his mouth, there's a girl here.
Yeah.
And then the second thing out of his mouth is hung herself. Who on which planet, who walks out of a house, sees somebody hanging naked from a balcony with their hands tied behind their back, their legs bound, a gag in their mouth, and thinks, oh, they've hung themselves.
Yeah.
Who does that? Nobody.
That would
Apart
not
from
be a...
Adam Shackney. Only Adam Shackney, the whole person in the entire universe, sees that and thinks, hung herself.
Yeah, but it weren't just that though. It's the most bizarre thing I found is, the operator then asks, "Is she still alive?" And he shouts, "Are you still alive?" Like a question. Well, first of all, he's already established or said to the operator, she's hung herself, or I think she's dead or whatever. So, why ask that sort of thing unless you just make you're trying to make it look as
theatrical,
believable as possible. I was going to say.
I don't know. I've never heard anybody say, "Are you alive?"
Yeah.
Well, he's walked out, as I just said, found her hanging naked, tied up, bound, gag in her mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, apart from the fact that, like, Leviticus saying, which we'll get into later, she's got a gag in her mouth.
Right.
Are you really expecting her to answer you, even if she is still alive?
Yeah. So then we also have, if you noticed in the recording as well, he's asked what the address is. Where are you? And he doesn't know the address. Now, I don't find it particularly unusual that he wouldn't know the specific number of the house because, a lot of us just don't pay attention that way. And he was a guest there. However, it was the Spreckles mansion. They'd been there before. You think that he would have mentioned it's the Spreckles mansion or the home of, Jonah Shackney or something along that line. He just doesn't offer any of that.
It's quite a famous mansion in the area. It was built by some sugar tycoon or something.
Yeah.
And everybody knew the Spreckles mansion.
Yeah, it's historical.
Like even when he was married to his previous wife, he'd owned that mansion. So it's not like it was a new property. He'd had it for years.
Right.
So he should at least been like, spurt that out. Spreckles mansion. Don't know the number, but it's a Spreckles mansion.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says that that's where you got the kid yesterday. No, it wasn't. That was 3 days ago. It's just, it seems like there's delaying tactics going on. That's just my opinion. Don't come from me, but like, he's delaying them. I don't know the address, and they're looking up yesterday. They went and got no kid from that area yesterday. They don't know what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
No, it obviously maybe in his own mind that because he was aware that happened, he just assumed they know. But it's a different operator probably. It's a different day. So, of course, to be helpful, he should have said the name and that. Again, it seems like delaying tactics.
He didn't even use the kid. He didn't went and got, my nephew was injured here the other day, Mac Shackney. But you got the kid yesterday. It's just like completely disassociating him.
Disassociation.
Disassociating himself from the entire everything.
Yeah, it makes it less personal, right? You're
And
You're
that
not
seems
involved.
like the theme here, and also like with the names, like this girl and that kid. Again, it's basically like
objects.
he's distances his relationship with them,
Yeah.
isn't he?
And then getting back to the whole address issue too, he claims that the home is across the street from a hotel. There's nothing across from the road
Isn't it
except
now?
Pacific Ocean.
And the beach.
So-
There's a bit of beach, and it's
Yeah.
got Coronado written in the sand, and then just water for as far as I can see.
So to say it was across the street from a hotel, I mean, I don't know, was this to delay a response from them getting there?
Was he hallucinating? Did these tablets make you hallucinate hotels across the road?
You know, listen, again, I'm not a doctor, but Ambien has been known to do different things and affect people differently. So
Yeah, and we've got to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt that obviously if he was really panic stressed and he did come across this unknowingly, you do say some strange things. People have been known to sort of react a bit bizarrely or forget things and things like that, or not
right.
construct stuff in their head. But yeah, it's really strange because then all of a sudden he started to remember their sack dress after he cut her down and allegedly attempted CPR. So all of a sudden, the next part,
The exact number.
Yeah, just blurts out the exact address quite far into the phone call,
yeah,
and then he
It's really
like
strange.
saying like allegedly giving CPR. He said, "I'm giving chest compressions right now." That is something that anybody that's done a St. John's ambulance course. Have you got a St. John's ambulance in America, Daniel?
probably
St. John's ambulance.
No, you've not.
No.
It's a UK thing. First aid course. Anybody that's done a first aid course knows that to do chest compressions, you need to be using both your hands. So he's still on the phone, telling them that he's giving chest compressions. He's clearly not using both his hands. He's not gone onto speakerphone because it doesn't sound like it's distant.
That
It
we can
doesn't
tell.
sound-
Yeah, it just doesn't sound.
muffled, so he's not like got the phone against like his shoulder. So he's lying there, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Don't come for me, Jonah Shark, now, because I'm not a billionaire like your brother, so you're not going to get any money out of me, but you're a liar.
And people could say, "Oh, yeah, he could have been on speakerphone." But if you listen to the recording, it does. You can tell when someone's on speakerphone versus having it right up to their ear, and it just doesn't sound that way. Granted, that wouldn't hold up in court, but
Yeah, there is noises earlier on that maybe sounds like he's attempting to do something. But at the point where he says, "I'm doing it right now,"
But again,
he's not doing it right now.
No, is it later on when you said that does sound like it? Is that more emulating rather than doing something? Because that was kind of strange.
The
Yeah.
whole thing's bizarre. There's just
It
more
is.
and more bizarre as we go on. But yeah,
so then to
Very
add to
weird.
that,
Very weird.
yep. So to add to that, Adam said in his deposition that he had run inside to look for a knife in the kitchen and then dragged a already broken three-legged table to where Rebecca was hanging. And
Yeah, there it is.
somehow he stood on this, balanced himself, allegedly to cut her body down. Then he apparently removed a blue Massimo t-shirt that was knotted and stuffed into her mouth and allegedly tried to administer mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, even though rigor mortis had already begun to set in, according to what we find out later. So he would have had to have had some really good balancing skills,
I
or
know.
did something else happen?
Yeah.
But this table, the leg's actually there, like it's just broke.
Right.
So he said it was already broken.
Yeah.
Can't imagine like a billionaire's going to just leave broken furniture in their garden.
I wouldn't think. You have usually, their areas cut meticulously. They have hired people that come in and take care of things. So it makes you wonder.
But also, if it was already broken and he brought it to the scene, we'll say, to the area, why did the broken leg
why did
came
the leg
along?
come with it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Shouldn't the leg be where it was initially?
Yeah.
Also, assuming that this hasn't been touched, and we believe that the crime scene wasn't touched because you can see her feet still bound there. Those are really her feet.
Yeah.
You're looking at the back of that table with the one leg broken off, facing where she was allegedly hanging. So all of his balance would have been to that back. Why is it turned that way? Why would he have put it in that position to stand on it?
It seems like he's doing everything as difficult as possible.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. I mean, we don't know if that was broke recently. Obviously, I doubt if the police actually checked that, which they should have done probably, because you could see if it's a clean break. But I mean, it's just something not quite right
You
in
just
there.
made a very good point. If the table was elsewhere in the garden and he went and fetched a broken table and dragged it over to stand on, did he then go, oh, I better go back and get the leg and put the leg beside it before I get on top of it? The leg's right next to it. The leg should be wherever it originally was standing.
Yeah. And again, why the end or the side with the broken leg where you're going to have the weight going down? Would that be facing where he needs to be standing?
Yeah. It just because
doesn't add up, Adam Shark Knight. It doesn't add up.
Maybe he broke it when he stood on it and he felt embarrassed. He sort of
because he's too fat for the vortex.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of strange.
That's
weird.
It's
kind of strange.
Right. As already stated, Adam called 911 on July the 13th, 2011 at 6:44 a.m. after over 10 hours of sleep. The medical examiner then arrived on scene 12 hours. Let me just, I'm not reading that wrong. It's not 1 or 2. It's 12 hours after Rebecca's body was found. So he arrives around 7 p.m. This, straight away, weird and highly unusual. Yeah. During this time, however, which is absolutely disgusting, her body was left lying naked in the backyard of the mansion, whilst media helicopters circled overhead like vultures and live-streamed her lying there to the entire nation. That was so disrespectful of law enforcement for not covering the body. They've got these like little blue tents or a tarp or little white tents that they put over all other crime scenes. But this one, they left her lying in full view of the media helicopters for 12 hours. So finally, the medical examiner arrives after 12 hours. God knows what he was doing for 12 hours. And he testified that Rebecca could have died 10 to 12 hours before she was found at 6:44 a.m. So that puts it all the way back to
6 p.m.
p.m. the evening before.
Right.
However, even though the medical examiner who is looking at her, even though it's 12 hours later, it's still within the same day, is saying that that's how long she'd been dead.
And he would know.
When the sheriff's office finally made their conclusion, they concluded that her time of death was around 3 a.m. because apparently they are more qualified in determining when a person died than the medical examiner.
So, yeah, I'm not sure how they went to that as the official time when you have a coroner or a medical examiner who has the knowledge of rigor mortis and when those things happen and lividity and all kinds of things. That person would know.
And I left that table on the screen for far too long. I do apologise, everybody.
Oh, so shocking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And just so you can try and figure out, I was just testing you so you can try and figure out if he broke it because he was too fat for the table. Apparently.
All right. Jonah and Dina were at Max's side when Adam called. Jonah left the room to take the call. When he returned, Dina says he told her that Rebecca had killed herself and then mimicked the action of someone stabbing themselves in the stomach. What?
They look like...
Yeah. Why?
There was no mention of that. Who does that?
Yeah.
That's like saying, oh, she killed herself.
It's just...
Like, what?
Just making it completely up.
There's no need for any actions.
Inappropriate much. Anyway, when Dina asked why, Jonah replied simply, Asian honour.
Racist.
Where did that come from? Why does that need to be said?
Yeah, why is that to the forefront of the mind? She was a Christian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When investigators from San Diego County Sheriff's Department came to interview Jonah at the hospital that afternoon, he said, she comes from a true Asian background. They just look at things differently in terms of responsibility.
What? Where's his grief?
I don't know, but well, that sounds like they're driving a narrative and a story there. They're telling you what to think.
Well, his brother drove the narrative from the very first thing that he said. Girl here hung herself, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Asian honor."
They all seem to be like to take control a little bit.
And just to call it Asian honor, okay, I don't know about Asian honor, but the fact that she allegedly did this to herself.
Yeah.
She stripped her clothes.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like something of honor.
Yeah, somebody's been watching too many movies.
Like, not even. I mean, it doesn't sound like you do something that you'd want to do to disrespect your family either. So you
Right.
be found like that. But it's like, regardless of being Asian or wherever you're from, no woman would do that.
Well,
No woman would do that to themselves.
He's been dating her for 3 years, and exactly the sort of first thing that you know, if you've heard that this has happened, that ain't the sort of thing you come out with, is it? Oh yeah, she's Asian. She's
It's a very, very bizarre reaction.
Yeah, it
and
is.
it's just not normal. It's not normal. It's not the way normal people react.
No.
During the police investigation into Rebecca's death, a number of bizarre things were discovered. And firstly, the painted message on the bedroom door. It simply said, "She saved him. Can you save her?" The message was painted. Yeah, very weird. It was painted at a height that would have been too tall for her. She was a small person, small woman. She was only about 5'3". And according to the experts who looked at the door, the height, and the handwriting and everything, they determined that a person would probably have been 6 foot tall to have that
So
line of sight.
comfortably
Mhm.
painted it.
Yeah. And it's been argued that she may have stood on a table or a stool or something that, or a table was knocked over in the bedroom. However, that table was never even tested for footprints, and it had no menstrual blood on it, which if it was mentioned or not, Rebecca was on her period. Blood spots were found elsewhere. And also there was no indentations on the carpet. Like, if you put a stool or a table or anything on carpet, and then it's moved, there's going to be those marks, those indentations where it would have been. That was not found here, to indicate that the table was placed there with someone standing on it at all. So
It's a very bizarre message, though. She saved him. Can you save her? It's not anything that anybody ever took their own life, left as a note,
right,
talking about themselves in the third person.
In the
I've
third
never
person.
seen anything like that.
yeah.
Weird. Now, to look at some of the evidence that was documented on the scene, at least the police did come in and put the little yellow things in and document the evidence. Didn't do much else though, but they did put little numbers on them. So we'll look at, first of all, object number 36, which is the paint tube. Now, here it is. A 120ml tube of Amsterdam acrylic paint in oxide black was found at the foot of the bed. The tube was completely devoid of fingerprints, except for one print of Rebecca's on top of the cap. This suggests the tube was wiped down, because to squeeze the paint out, it would be impossible not to leave prints on the body of the tube. So this is like on the actual top of the cap, the bit that you flip open. That's where the fingerprint is. There's no fingerprints anywhere else. So they're quite... As an artist, these are all quite glossy, these tubes. So if you touch them, if you imagine, like, if you're not an artist, same as a tube of toothpaste, you're going to leave a fingerprint on them. And there was nothing. And also, just really quickly, I have another picture just to show that when they actually discovered the crime scene, the tube was underneath a white bag that appears to be a 13-gallon kitchen garbage bag. No idea what that bag was used for, but when they removed that, they found the tube of paint and one of the 2 paintbrushes that was on the scene underneath it. So
I just find that all highly unusual. Like you said, how do you take a flip top without holding the base of the tube itself? And then if you're going to remove fingerprints, why leave the ones on the cap?
It all sounds very strange. I mean, you could argue that it was held everything, because spoiler alert, there's no fingerprints anywhere. That everything was held using the garbage bag, because I mean, why else was that there? But why would she do that? Why would she not want to leave her own fingerprints?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, apparently the narrative is that she did it, but then, like you said, with a toothpaste, you squeeze the toothpaste, and even if you're one of them people who roll it up at the bottom, that stuff can come out by itself.
To paint that message, like, the way that this paint comes out, you're going to have to constantly be squeezing that to get more and more paint out.
Yeah.
So it's not just like once and then really quickly you're done and you might not left a fingerprint. You're constantly squeezing it. There's got to be at least one print on there, unless somebody had gloves on or wiped it clean.
Also, What about the actual container or the pallet that the paint was put on? Where's that? Because the paint to go on the wall for someone to paint it on there, that paint they didn't pour the paint straight on the brush, do they?
Not usually.
Not usually, no.
You see what I mean?
There's
Yeah.
nothing.
So that evidence has been removed or lost. Why didn't no one look for that? You don't
Well,
paint
if
straight
we
on that.
go back to, I think it's this picture here. No, it's the next one.
Yeah, with the
There's two paintbrushes there. There's one just under the bag that you can see on the left-hand picture, and then on the right-hand picture, when the bag's been removed, you can see that. I think that's object number 33 that's been marked as, which doesn't look like it's got any paint on it at all, but it's lying on the floor. And then
Right.
in the first picture, it's a bit grey, this picture. I couldn't find a clearer picture. Got object 31. It's a slightly thicker brush, which you can't really tell if there's paint on that. So why would you? I don't know.
But neither of them are big enough to write that because you'd at least need a 1-inch brush, I should imagine.
yeah, I mean, were those just those dark black brown bristles, or was that actual black paint on the tip of that one? It's hard to tell.
No.
You don't see it on the other one though.
All right, now we're going to look at the steak knife. In the picture, as you can see, item number 27, it appears to be a small steak knife. This was also devoid of prints. Again, see where the theme is going here.
Mm-hmm.
It did also have menstrual blood on the handle, indicating that some sort of sexual assault may have been carried out using the item. I mean, again, you got the blood, but no fingerprints.
You can
That
see
don't
it,
make
you can see it
sense.
more clearly in that picture.
Yeah, and if you look at that, yeah, you can see what's exactly going on in there.
Yeah, I think they determined that it was possibly a sexual assault because of where the blood was placed on that knife, or where it was found. It's actually all around. It's not just on that one side where that first rivet
It was
is.
only noticed because the first rivet was slightly discoloured
Yeah,
on the side it was showing, and when they turned it over, it was also discoloured on the other side, and they tested the black part, and there is blood on there as well.
on the
And
other hand,
there is a slight, like just before the second rivet, like a line, like there is something on there up to that point.
on the other hand, and when the autopsy was done, I don't recall that they were talking about any sexual assault.
No.
You think that would have been evident?
But the initial autopsy or the second one?
Well, either or would have, well, we would hope would have been a thorough investigation. Now, was it because they believed that she did this to herself that they didn't even bother checking to see if she'd been sexually assaulted? Or was it just not found? I don't know. I know that, again, they assumed that it probably, this knife could have been used for that because of the blood pattern.
Well, if it was lying on the floor, I mean, she'd just come out of the shower and she was undressed. She'd only had a towel on at some point. I'm not quite sure if the red thing we saw in the previous picture was the towel. I don't know.
Right.
But she was undressed. She had there had been menstrual blood found in other parts of the home. Now, if she'd bled like just by standing over the area where this knife was, you would expect the blood to fall just on the one side of the knife. But
Yeah.
the fact that it was found on both sides is very weird.
Very
Because one
weird.
side would be facing down to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, of course, like she had it on her hand and when she touched it.
Grabbed it.
It's just all purely speculation. But
Again.
it's just one anomaly amongst
I
many.
don't understand how many of these items have been moved, touched, used, yet there's no fingerprints, and people are going to believe that this is acceptable. Yet
Mhm.
there's blood and whatever and whatnot on things. I mean, how is anyone believing this? I do not believe
Without
this.
question.
That's ridiculous.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, that was me getting a bit agitated about it because that's
Agitated.
well, that's just so clear,
It's
isn't it?
just-
So obvious.
But there's just it's not just this. There's just so many things that don't make sense in this case. So it does
Yeah.
wind you up. It does wind you
Yeah.
up.
So looking at object 26, we have a butcher knife, which was also found in the bedroom, and it has some bizarre attributes as well. Again, no prints or DNA were discovered on the handle or the knife. However, the blade did have some prints, and they were Rebecca's, apparently, which in itself is bizarre, but the positioning of the prints is not normal. If you're looking at it the way the blade is and where it shows L for left and R for right, where the position of her hands were, it makes you wonder how in the world was she in this position. So I think that we're going to try and figure this out. Lisa,
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
we're going to have a little
I'll start
example.
off with Gordon. Please do not try this at home, because it's very dangerous, and I don't know why I'm doing it, because I'm not the most suitable person to be handling dangerous things like a butcher knife. And I've not got any red rope, but I'm going to tie my own hands up with my dressing gown cord. I did ask Jamie if he would tie me up, but he refused.
Well, apparently Rebecca did it herself.
Yeah,
so you've
apparently
got
she
to
did
do
it
that
herself, so-
yourself.
Apparently she did.
I'm not going to do the same weird knot she did, because God knows how to do that. But
So
I'm
in
gonna
regard to that, the fact that they claim that she tied herself up, bound herself up, apparently the way they said that she did this is she would have done like Lisa's doing right now with her hands in front of her.
tied one on my wrist.
Yeah.
They're saying that she would have done it in the front, and then
Right.
took one hand out and then put it behind her back. So
Yes. So
it's
that
not
the
going to
one,
be the same. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I can't do.
but
why is he not?
they claim that this was possible, that she tied herself with this ski rope and was able to wiggle one hand out
I mean, I'm going
and
to
then
use my
place
back.
it behind her back and slip her hand back in. Seems like an awful lot of trouble to go through.
Oh, I'm stuck. Wait a minute. Yeah, this is going well, isn't it? Right, and then I do that. Woo! Right. It's not the same.
It's not the same.
And then
We're not exactly showing this just to see how she did it with the time.
Right.
But I think she
I'm
just
going
displayed
to try and put myself on full screen with my hands tied up so I can show you the next part. Hello. Right, I've got my hands tied up. I'm going to take this one out. I'm going to stand up. So I'm going to turn around. Can you see? I can't
Mhm.
see. So
Yep, we got your back.
I'm going to put them behind my back and put that hand in. So my hands are now tied behind my back.
Correct.
Right.
I can still get out if I want to, but it's not the same knot. So imagine that somebody else has done this to her for a moment, and then she tries to escape. So there's all this stuff's on the floor. She grabs the knife. Right, if she takes the knife by the handle to try and cut herself free, can you see the knife?
No.
Not very well.
Yeah.
Now we can. Yes.
Right. She's just going to cut her back. There's no way by holding the
It's
handle.
too long.
Which
and-
actually, holding the handle that way, I'm putting my thumb there, and I believe on the picture that we've got a
That's
thumb.
where one of the
we've got a thumbprint
thumbprints are.
here, so that's where one of them is. So that doesn't work. If I hold it from the non-bladed side, is that the non-bladed side?
Yeah.
I hope so. I'm going to cut my fingers off. The non-bladed side to try and cut it. I'm not.
Yeah.
It's going to be impossible. Oh,
It's
no.
not. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Now all her fingerprints are on the bladed side, so if I do it that way and hold it that way, so I've got it that way, yeah. I'm gonna have to do it near the bottom so that I've got some blade above.
And make it shorter, bring it
I
closer
can
to
use
the
that
rope.
to cut the rope to try and
Right.
free myself.
Yes.
That's the only explanation that I've come up with. 'Cause I've done this before and didn't kill myself.
You make it sound like you make a habit of doing it.
I've escaped before when Jamie tied me up.
No.
That's the Now, obviously, she didn't manage to free herself. Can you take that knife off me so I don't
Right.
drop it anywhere?
Which
Yeah, well,
which
I think I better take that off you.
She didn't manage to free herself, which suggests that somebody maybe stopped her from freeing herself, and that's really on tight on there, right? There we
Yeah.
go. But that, if we now go back to the picture, when I tried to hold it by the handle, my thumb was in the position of where the right thumb is, near the handle, so she might have tried to do that.
yeah.
But the only explanation for having these fingerprints on the blade side, near the bottom, to have the blade above to cut yourself, was what I done at the end. So that's what I think happened, and that's my
Well-
science experiment. Did you like my experiment, everybody? I'm not cut.
Which makes you wonder too, if she allegedly did this to herself, tied herself up in front of her, put it behind her back, it still should have been loose enough to where she could have slipped it back out again if she wanted to escape. Or if she did do this to herself, why does she have a
I
knife trying?
managed to get free.
Why does she have to try and cut herself free if she did this to herself?
Yeah. You'd have to leave one slightly loose on the front to get it out, to
Yes.
put it behind your
Well,
back.
well,
So you could get that back out again. There would be no reason to do that.
if you were tying yourself up to throw yourself off a balcony, why would you be fiddling with a knife in the first place?
Exactly.
There'd be no reason why that would be there.
That's my point. Why would she be trying to cut the rope off when she wanted to do this, apparently?
Yeah.
Apparently.
So the fact that she didn't actually manage to cut herself free says to me that that's the only explanation for those fingerprints. There's no other reason to have your fingerprints on the bladed side like that.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, if you can think of one, let me know. But I have tried it.
Yeah, well, thank you for
Don't
showing
try
us
it
that.
because it's dangerous, and I shouldn't have done it. But unless somebody else was there, and she was maybe unconscious, she'd came to, she'd realised she was tied up. There was a knife there. She tried to use it to escape, and they either took it away from her or moved her away from it. That's what I think happened. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, it's strange.
And I'm entitled to it.
Yes, you are.
It's weird. Now on to the balcony, Jamie. Do you want to tell us about the balcony?
Yeah. Well, again, another host of strange anomalies and bizarre happenings and things not done correctly, I think. On the balcony, the police found Rebecca's bare footprints and toe impressions. Okay, so far. There was also a boot impression discovered. Police claimed this must have been one of the officers' boot prints. However, they never tested it or compared it to boots or shoes that the officer was wearing on the scene. So how can they, deny it was right or wrong or whatever? It's strange. They should have tested it to see if the prints matched the police boots.
It's almost like they couldn't be bothered, isn't it, Jamie?
Or purposely saw it and thought, that looks suspicious, but we don't want to mention that because we will want an easy evaluation of this scene. Also, those officers on the scene should have been wearing covers on their shoes.
Mhm.
You get them like them little
Blue shower cups.
Booties.
yeah, they look like shower caps that goes over the shoes to
They're
stop
probably not shower cups.
cross-contamination and things like that. But if they had followed the procedure, then this boot impression, being that one of the law enforcement personnel, is impossible. So it's either they weren't wearing the correct stuff and taking it seriously, or that was somebody else's boot print.
Well,
again, we'll never know.
At this point where this boot print was allegedly made, if it was a police officer, this is an active crime scene. And there's no way that is one of the paramedics' boot prints because she was on the grass on the floor below. They didn't even go anywhere near the upstairs. So the only people that went in there to investigate were the detectives and police officers. And if that's one of their boot prints, why didn't they prove it?
Right. Exactly. So also adding to the circumstantial evidence would be this witchcraft book that was allegedly found. And detectives found this on a shelf in the guest room, which Zahau was not staying in, but it was the room where she allegedly did this to herself.
Was hanging from.
Yes. So the book was titled Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft, which showed drawings of a ritual or rite of a naked woman with her hands tied behind her back. Now, there's no evidence that this book even belonged to Rebecca, like I said, as she was found hanging from the balcony of the guest bedroom. So who did the book belong to? It's entirely speculative. And police point to this, though, as evidence that she did this to herself. The book may have been relevant in her death, but conclusions like the police coming to saying that it justifies that she did this to herself using this book as a right, and it's based upon zero investigation.
Yeah.
This book could have belonged to anybody. It was in the guest room. She didn't even stay in the guest room. That just happens to be where this took place. It's just too many circumstantial.
Yeah, the fact that there is an image in there of somebody naked with their hands tied behind their back may be relevant, but they're just completely ignoring a lot of the facts. Like, it wasn't her bedroom. You'd imagine that she was in the master suite because it was her and her partner's house. And she was a Christian. Why would she have a book on witchcraft?
Right.
She was a very devout Christian. She's not going to have a book on witchcraft.
Well, this is the thing what annoys me again about this is because, as we've seen so far, they didn't bother checking this, they didn't bother doing that. Then there's all these sort of anomalies that they're not picking up on. And then all of a sudden they went through a witchcraft book just to find one page out of that book to justify what was going on there. That doesn't,
Mhm.
again, who would do that?
Yeah.
Was there more books there? Did
Right. Did they test
they-
it for prints?
Yeah.
Who knows at this point?
Yeah.
The bedroom adjoining the balcony where Zahow was reportedly found hanging appeared staged, according to Maurice Godwin, who has a PhD in criminal psychology and runs a forensic consultancy business in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And that's him right there. This death has many hallmarks of a ritualistic killing, he said. I think someone assaulted her physically. I think she was dazed and they bound her. Godwin, who has been investigating crime scenes for 15 years, believes the black paint, which was also found on Zahow's breasts, collarbone, and hands, has a ritualistic overtone. And so do I.
Although DNA on the scene as well as fingerprints were bizarrely practically non-existent, there are anomalies that were never investigated, as we've just discussed some of them. The Zahow family attorney Anne Bremner first revealed that mixed DNA was found at the death scene during the airing of the Dr. Phil show.
Which we would show you, but Dr. Phil does
Doesn't
not
allow
like
that.
Using material.
Yeah, he'll sue you, and he doesn't like you using his show, so we can't do it. So if you want to watch the Dr. Phil show, feel free to go and look it up yourself and watch it. It is very interesting, but we can't show you any clips, unfortunately.
Right.
She says, we have mixed DNA in this case all over, in things like the knife, the bed frame, black gloves, said Bremner. Mixed DNA, unexplained as to who these other donors are, she continued. It's a case that just cries out for answers and investigation. We have mixed DNA in her fingernails, the Seattle-based attorney said.
Which is huge.
Yeah,
She just had a shower,
Right.
and she had mixed DNA on her body, especially under her fingernails.
Yeah. The significance of the DNA findings was debated during a hastily organised news conference by the Sheriff's Department, held in response to the findings from a second autopsy performed on Zahow's body and discussed on the Dr. Phil programme.
Yeah, that is strange. As Lisa pointed out, she had just gotten out of the shower, so mixed DNA under her fingernails seems highly unusual and suspect, doesn't it?
Definitely.
So, the sheriff's crime lab director, Michael Grubb, did not dispute the presence of unidentifiable mixed DNA at the Coronado scene. The majority of the DNA under Rebecca Zahow's fingernails was her own, said Grubb. Various fingernails were tested as separate samples, and one of them showed a DNA mixture, but the level of DNA was so low that it was an uninterpretable mixture. In addition to the fingernail sample, unidentified DNA also was recovered from the rope in Zahow's alleged hanging, a large knife used to cut the rope, the bed frame to which the rope was tied, a doorknob on the balcony door, and a pair of black gloves found on the table in the mansion, Grubb said.
I believe they were in the kitchen now. They weren't in the bedroom.
Because the amount of mixed DNA recovered was so minuscule, San Diego County Sheriff Bill Gore said it was unnecessary to collect DNA samples from Zahow's boyfriend, Jonah Shacknai, or Jonah's ex-wife, Dina Shacknai. I don't know why you still wouldn't collect DNA samples from everybody involved. It seems like such an easy thing to do.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, yeah, they should have had them anyway. It's a crime scene, and they're all people that have been in that area. Maybe not so much Dina, who didn't live there, but at least Jonah and Adam, who was there. They should have had samples. But the actual DNA was, you couldn't get a DNA profile from the minuscule amount of DNA that was under her fingernails or on the rope. That's fair enough. But the fact that there is mixed DNA there indicates that there was somebody else there other than Rebecca. And they just seem to completely ignore this and well, it's too small, so we can't tell who it is, so we just pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah. They wrote it off.
It doesn't work like that. The world doesn't work like that. So, allegedly, the sheriff's office found no DNA on Rebecca's body, apart from those traces we just discussed. It was under her fingernails. And unidentifiable small amount of DNA on the rope she was hanging from. Yet we know for a fact, a guaranteed fact according to his own testimony, that Adam Shacknai took a knife for the kitchen. I've got this knife and I keep waving it about. Took a knife for the kitchen, climbed onto a wobbly table, apparently, grabbed that rope, cut it down,
Without touching
while
the
holding
rope.
the rope. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be standing on a wobbly table and just going,
Right.
you'd fall off.
But
You
apparently
would
he did.
grab onto the rope to steady yourself so you're touching it. Yeah?
Mhm.
So he grabbed the rope, cut it down, and then he got down to her and he removed the gag from her mouth, getting his DNA on the gag.
Mhm.
And then he gave her CPR and gave her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
More
and then-
DNA.
And then gave her chest compressions, and yet there is not a single trace of Adam Shacknai's DNA on that rope, on her body,
It's a
or
miracle.
anywhere. Now, that is suspicious as hell.
Yeah.
The actual lack of his DNA is suspicious. So does that mean that it wasn't there at all? Which means that he's lying and he didn't
Right.
touch her body, and it was already cut down and on
Yeah.
the floor. Does it mean that he's wiped it off, which means he's trying to cover something up? Or does it mean that they did find his DNA or they're covering up? Because
Well-
somebody's lying here.
Exactly.
Because all the things that he did, there should be DNA of his on her body
Well-
and on that rope.
Lisa, you just said that either this did happen or he's lying. Well, we know he must be lying, because if it wasn't him and he turned up and she was already cut down, etc., etc., somebody else must have had fingerprints and DNA. You know, somebody else who may have done it didn't. She didn't cut herself down because she was she'd passed by that point.
Unless she was never hanging from the balcony in the first place, and that was staged, which we'll get to in a little while when we discuss lividity.
Mhm.
But somebody touched the rope. Somebody touched the rope at the very least.
Mhm.
On the scene, the bed that Rebecca was hung from was noted to having moved only 7 inches out of place. Rebecca was a 32-year-old female that was 5 foot 3 inches tall and weighed approximately 45 kilograms or 100 pounds. She was found hanging from the balcony of the guest bedroom. The distance from the balcony to the knot on the ligature around her neck was 110 inches or 9 feet and 2 inches. And she came to rest 26.5 inches, just over 2 feet above the ground. A news agency did a reenactment of this using the exact same 300-pound bed frame from the same manufacturer and a 100-pound punch bag being dropped from the balcony to represent Rebecca. Under their first test, the drop was only 7 feet, 2 feet less than Rebecca's drop, and the bed moved 36 inches, a lot further than the bed moved on the scene.
Mhm.
They then added an additional 100 pounds of weight to the bed to account for the weight of the mattress being different and all the bedding and things like that. And again, simulating a 7-foot drop, the bed moved 20 inches, almost 3 times the distance it moved at the Sprinkles mention.
Mhm.
They then tested with a simulation of a 9-foot drop and the 400-pound bed, and it moved a massive 37.5 inches, 5 times farther.
Well, it was a 9-foot drop, and that's with the maximum weight of the bed.
Yeah, would have jolted it.
That is a huge difference. If you look at the picture again, 7 inches, just over. Well, even if you say 7.5 inches, in the simulation, it moved 30 inches further.
So basically, this leave us all with one question: did she actually fling herself over the balcony? Was she lowered? Was there more than one person involved? Did somebody hold on to the bed frame?
Right.
You know, while another one was throwing her over the balcony. We just don't know. But
There is an anomaly there. There's something weird going on. That's only moved.
Yeah. When you look at the reenactment of it,
yeah, you would have thought it moved more than that anyway. Regardless of, I know she weren't very heavy.
Yeah, she was only 100 pounds, which, by the way, how rude. That's like one chin. That's one chin, Rebecca Zahu.
it seems to me that she would have been, for it to not have originally been much of a movement, to think that she would have jumped herself, that jolt would have been,
Yeah, because it's like 100-pound weight.
Yeah.
fall at 9 feet and come into a dead stop.
Right.
That's going to pull whatever it's tied onto.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen here. So it leads me to think she was
There's something
maybe
else going
lowered.
on. Something
Or
else is going on.
was she there? I don't know. Which takes us into the next thing, which is lividity. And lividity is the bluish purple discoloration on the skin, which occurs after death. And this happens when the blood pools to the lowest part or the lower extremity of the body because the heart is basically no longer pumping. So gravity dictates where that blood is going to collect, where the lowest point is going to be. Lividity is a good indication also of the time of death and the position in which the individual died. It normally begins between 30 minutes to 4 hours after death, and it's most pronounced at around the 12-hour mark. Now, Rebecca was found hanging by the neck from a balcony 2 feet above the ground. Logic and science would dictate that lividity in her body would pool to the bottoms of her feet or her feet area, right? However, this was not the case. Rebecca had lividity in her back and on the backs of her arms, which would indicate that she died on her back and was left in that position for at least 30 minutes minimum for lividity to begin to set in on those areas. She also had lividity in her feet. They would call this dual lividity, and this only typically occurs when a body is moved post-mortem, so after she had been dead. So
More
the whole
strange.
lividity issue makes you wonder too, how did it happen?
That's
Where
also
did it
interesting because, like, the sheriff's office completely ignored the coroner, who said that she died 10 to 12 hours before she was found,
Mhm.
and said it was 3 a.m. Now, if it was 3 a.m. and she was found just after 6, that's only giving you 3 hours. Now, it can happen between 30 minutes to 4 hours, but that's putting it very tight time frame for lividity to set in once, never mind twice. So
Yeah,
it kind of throws her 3 a.m. off a little bit.
Yeah, something amiss again.
right.
And just really quickly, another couple of anomalies in this case. There was tape residue found on Rebecca's legs during her autopsy. This may indicate that she, if you go with the official cause of death, or whomever killed her, if you go with what I believe happened, initially tried to bind her legs with tape. However, no tape was found anywhere on the scene. So if it was Rebecca doing it to herself, where did it go? Did she
Where was
completely
it?
remove it from the house and where is it? It should
Yeah.
have been found. There was a blue sweatshirt with the arms wrapped around her head and forced into her mouth like a gag. The official statement as the reasoning as to why they believe she did this to herself is so she wouldn't scream, which frankly is absolutely bloody ridiculous and
Yeah.
absurd. I've never heard anything so stupid in my life.
Also, the thing is, right, because obviously she's supposed to do all this herself, but again, is she going into really great lengths? Why? I mean, you could argue that she used the tape first and oh, this is a bit rubbish. I mean, I don't see how it'd be a bit rubbish, but apparently she must have thought that and thought, oh, I'll get some rope instead. But again, where's the tape? Why go from that method to this method? Why not just stick to one or you know?
Well, if she was doing it herself and
Strange.
she tried tape and she didn't think for whatever reason that was going to be secure enough or whatever, then it would just be left discarded on the floor,
Right.
like the random kitchen bin bag it was on the floor,
Yes.
and the random thing that looks like a tumble dryer sheet that was on the floor that I didn't even know what that was for. There's even a dog's bone left on the floor in that bedroom, and the dog's been out the house for 3 days. So why is she moving tape and getting it completely out of the house? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and even if she had done that and they didn't find the tape in the room with the other evidence, the tape allegedly was not found anywhere on the property.
But you can guarantee if they did have it, there would have been no print on it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but no
Just-
print and
yeah.
no DNA on the
Good
tape.
point. Good point.
Yeah, I don't know. Gag on a mouth and tape and then rope. That just seems like all too much for somebody to do this to themselves. But there you go. Right. The police concluded Rebecca's time of death as being around 3 a.m. However, a neighbour, Marsha Allison, who lived one door down, told them that on the previous evening at approximately 11:40, she heard a woman screaming, help me," from the front of the house.
You're not going to do that in a woman's voice.
Help me, help me.
Is that a woman's voice?
I have no idea. Anyway,
Help me.
Help me.
the police completely discounted the woman's statement as it did not align with their theory of what happened. But this woman testified to this under deposition in the civil trial, which we will discuss later. Now, again, I mean, we've got a few problems here because, again, if she had a gag in her mouth, she wouldn't have been heard screaming, would she? But why did they dismiss this woman? Because you would have screamed. I don't know.
No, why was she screaming?
I'm
Why was she
confused.
screaming in the bedroom
Right.
before she'd done anything?
Mm-hmm. It just doesn't add up as to how someone would do this to themselves and go through those steps and that measure to do so.
No, it's just weird.
So we're now going to go over the whereabouts and the alibi of the people that were involved or allegedly involved. Which brings us to Dina Shacknai, Max's mother. Another witness said that they thought that they saw Max's mother, Dina, at the house at around 11 to 11:30 p.m. that evening. Dina was cleared by the police because the hospital's CCTV apparently showed her leaving and entering the hospital at different times throughout the evening, so that gave her an alibi that she was at the hospital. There are CCTV images from the hospital showing Dina entering and leaving the hospital, but the timestamps on the evidence provided show her entering at 16:25 p.m., which I believe is 4:25 p.m.,
Yeah.
and leaving at 17:59 p.m., or is that 5:29?
1 minute to 6.
Okay. At least 5 hours before she was reportedly seen at the mansion by a witness. The mansion's only 20 minutes away from the hospital, and if there is evidence of her on CCTV from the indicated time frame, then it has never been released. Yet they did release these earlier images, which is strange as the time was never relevant.
Yeah, you'd think if they were going to show her alibi and release these images, they'd show images from like between 11, because at 11:30, 11:40 she was saying that time, and 3 a.m. Where was she?
Right.
Who cares? Who cares if she left the hospital at 17:59?
Mm-hmm.
Again, it just
It's
seems like things are
completely
trying to justify
Completely
things.
irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Now for Dina's twin sister, Nina. There's a lot of Inas in this story.
Yeah.
We've got Rebecca's sister, Zina, and then we've got Dina and Nina and Gina, and there's not a Gina.
Twins.
honestly.
There's no Gina.
Nina Romano. On the day of Rebecca's death, Nina texted Rebecca saying that Dina, this is going to be very confusing, everybody. So Nina texted Rebecca saying that Dina wanted to come over and ask about the circumstances of Max's fall. Rebecca, however, never responded. In response to the witness saying that they saw Dina, which is Max's mother, Nina claimed that she visited the mansion that evening between 11 and 11:30, which very tightly coincides with the 11:40 screen.
Mm-hmm.
Not her sister. So Nina, the twin sister, Max's aunt, is saying that she was there. Now, these women are twins, but as you can see, they're not identical
No.
twins, and it's quite easy to tell them apart.
Yeah, one looked like they came from the 80s, and one looked like they came from the 90s. It's got the shoulder pads and everything.
So we've got one
Yeah.
twin from the 80s, apparently, and one from the 90s, according to Jamie. But they've got different hair colours. They're also different heights, which we'll get into in a little while.
Yeah.
You can tell them apart. So Nina's saying, Dina? Zina? Yeah, Nina is saying that she was the one that was there between 11 and 11:30. So Nina claims that she knocked on the door and got no answer. So she called out for Rebecca, then really creepily looked in the windows, like, and then left. This is a particularly late hour for an unsolicited visit, in my opinion. She had texted Rebecca and got no answer. The text was saying that Dina was the one that wanted to go there, but the fact that she got no response and then just went there anyway seems a bit weird to me, because Rebecca hadn't answered her message. It was late at night. You would
Right.
assume the person's gone to bed. Because, I mean, Adam went to bed at 8 o'clock. So, I mean, why are you expecting anybody to be awake in this family at that time of the night? I don't know. So, in summary, because I'm blathering on, Nina's alibi is that she was present at the mansion, knocking at the door and peering in the windows like some sort of weirdo at the exact time that a neighbour heard a woman in the front of the house screaming for help. Yet apparently she's got an alibi because the sheriff's office ignored the coroner and the witness and decided that Rebecca died at 3 a.m. Rebecca had just showered before her death and was wearing only a towel, as we've mentioned previously, and she was also on her period. And there were drops of menstrual blood found in the downstairs foyer, which indicates that after her shower, she had gone downstairs for some reason, which is as yet unknown. It was also found in the hallway upstairs on the landing that she'd obviously stopped there for a certain period for some reason, long enough to bleed leave a drop of blood on the floor. Perhaps she was answering the door. Personally, I think that it's more likely that she went for a shower at around about 11 o'clock at night rather than having a shower at the ungodly hour of 3 a.m. and then deciding to end her life. But because that aligns with the witness testimonies, the coroner, and everything else.
Yeah.
But saying it's 3 a.m. conveniently gives everybody an alibi, doesn't it? Apart from Nina, who was only alibied up until 1 minute to 6 the night before.
And why was she wandering about in just a towel around the house? And like they said in the front foyer, we don't hear any mention of this as being part of the investigation that could lead them to think that somebody else was involved. They still want to say that this was all her.
Well, they might be assuming that she went downstairs for like the knives or something, but if you're intent on ending your own life, wouldn't you get that all organised?
Well, see, we're talking about somebody who was prepared to do some kind of painting on the wall and put all these little fancy knots around themselves and use duct tape and whatever before
and then leave the house completely, apparently in a towel, to like dispose of the tape somewhere else because it's not there.
Nowhere to be found.
That makes sense. None of it makes sense.
So now for the main person now, Jamie. Jamie, tell us where Adam Shacknai was.
So
we already kind of know, but there's interesting facts coming, everybody.
So, where was Adam Shacknai? I bet you're all wondering this. Right. According to his own deposition, he was at the guest house directly behind the main house and was the only other person on the property with Rebecca on the night she died. He claims he took a sleeping pill, which was that
Ambien,
which is probably the Ambien, and went to bed at 8 p.m. and did not wake up until 6 a.m. the following morning when he discovered Rebecca.
And he was going to get coffee because there was no coffee in the guest house.
No coffee.
However, according to the Sahau family attorney, more than a dozen searches of sexual content using terms like sexy Asian girls and bondage anime were accessed on a computer in the guest house that evening before Rebecca's death. Strange. She stated it is important to the investigation because there's an image from anime that is called Bond anime, and it shows an Asian woman bound, at least her hands were bound behind her back.
Interesting.
Which it brings us to, wonder why that never got mentioned, yet this witchcraft book, which was probably full of all different material, got mentioned. Anyway.
The fact there was a random book in a guest bedroom that God knows who had access to.
Yeah.
That there's no evidence it was even read. It wasn't open or anything on that page. Was used as evidence to prove the police's theory, but the fact that somebody, when there was only two people there, somebody that was the only one in the guest house logged onto a computer and searched for that in particular on that evening was discounted.
Yeah.
In the guest house where we know Adam was staying in the guest house.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You would have thought that, somebody searching porn would be more important than some little dusty book on a shelf that wasn't even somebody's
especially
bedroom.
the type that we're talking about here, right?
Yeah. Bremner said it was not Sahau who looked at the online content and suggested the computer may have been accessed by somebody using an airline account. Not sure what one of them is.
It might be, is that an American thing? Like, do you get like a
I don't know if it's like
Wi-Fi or something when
If you access the Wi-Fi when you're in the air, maybe? I'm not sure.
remotely or something. Yeah. The only two people who had recently flown were Adam and Nina. Surprise, surprise.
interesting.
So where was Jonah Shacknai? On the evening of the 12th, Jonah was at dinner with his brother Adam and girlfriend Rebecca, and then returned to the Ronald McDonald House, which is a place, if you're not familiar, it's where families can stay in close proximity to a loved one who's at the hospital if you're coming from far distances, which is normally what is done. This is reserved for parents who have traveled a great distance and they need to be with their sick child. So personally, it seems bizarre that Jonah, a billionaire with a massive mansion only 20 minutes away from the hospital, would even need access to this facility.
Yeah.
His cell phone tracking indicates his phone was at the hospital all night, but it doesn't mean that it was in his possession, right? Because we all know that your phone can be somewhere apart from you and it can be accessed. So
I know why he was there and not at the home, because he knew there was only coffee in one room. And there was
He had to go to McDonald's for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
happened.
Usually if your parents, they'll even have you a room at the hospital for you. If you have a young child and you want to stay overnight with the child, depending on the circumstances, they might allow you to be in the room in an empty bed or in an adjoining room or something like that. But it does seem strange with the hospital only being 20 minutes away that
Well,
they
if
would
he's
need-
staying in a completely different building, he's left the child anyway. It's not there for the comfort of the child. So when you've got a multi-million-dollar mansion just up the road, why are you taking up something that's for people that's maybe had children that's went to this specialist hospital from another state or like miles and miles away?
Right. Interesting.
Anyway, quickly going to go over the height issue, as we mentioned earlier about the weird "she saved him, can you save her" on the door. Now, Rebecca Zahu, as we've already mentioned, was just over 5'3". Nina Romano is 5'8". Jonah Shacknai is 5'9". Adam Shacknai is 5'9". And Dina Shacknai is a Nephilim. She's 6 feet tall.
An Amazon.
Yeah, she is very, very tall. So the person who wrote the weird message on the door, according to forensic experts and people who had looked into this, had to be at least 6 feet tall to do it comfortably. They did speculate that she stood on a table that was knocked over in the bedroom, as Danielle mentioned earlier, but there's no evidence of that whatsoever. So they're just making stuff up to fit into the narrative. So why would you write a nonsensical suicide note in the third person at a height where it's really uncomfortable for her to reach to at 5'3", when everybody else is getting on for a height where it's more comfortable, 5'9", 6 feet tall? Dina was at the house between 11 and 11:30, according to her own statement. A neighbour heard a scream at 11:40. Adam was there. Jonah, apparently, he was at the hospital because his phone was there.
So this isn't to say that she couldn't have written this by standing on the floor level, but it would have appeared different according to the analysis that they did.
The angle of the brush strokes,
and again, it seems like, as before, it seems something extra difficult to do again, and an extra step that probably didn't, for somebody who wanted to end their life or whatever, a step that didn't need to occur. It just, again, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
There's too many questions that have never been answered suitably.
Yeah. Cell phone records confirm that someone listened to a voicemail on Rebecca's phone at 12:50 a.m. on July the 13th. There was no way to confirm this was actually Rebecca, who over an hour earlier was allegedly heard screaming for help by a neighbour, if you recall that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This voicemail was apparently left by Jonah around 12:30 and picked up and deleted 20 minutes later. This voicemail, as far as anyone is aware, has never been retrieved. Again, Very strange, because we know that these messages can be retrieved by police if they can be bothered to.
Yeah, and it's not like it was 1993. It's just 2011. They had the
Exactly.
technology to do that.
Yeah.
So-
Nothing's ever permanently erased and disappeared. Yeah.
We are, however, told that this voicemail was an update on Max's condition and informed her that he was not likely to survive, which is a really strange thing to leave on a voice message. Sorry, that is.
Yeah.
However, the doctors themselves did not inform the Shacknow family of this until the following day. So that sounds again like a load of
Yeah, they
BS.
didn't know that till about 11 o'clock the following morning.
Yeah.
But even had you speculated that, let's just say, you didn't phone somebody up at like 10 to 1 in the morning to tell them that, and then they didn't answer, so I'll just leave that. You didn't give them news like that on a voicemail. You didn't do that in a text message.
No.
You want to talk to the person.
well, they don't even know.
And why would she have done this without knowing that he was
the result?
that he was, the prognosis was he wasn't
Yeah.
going to make, I mean,
Yeah,
she
she
didn't
Crazy.
really,
hadn't been made yet until the next morning.
yeah. So adding on to yet other questions that are brought to us is the hair inside of the noose. Now, this might be superficial to some people, but to a lot of us, and especially women who have longer hair, one of the anomalies that stands out is the fact that when the noose was placed around her neck, her hair was left inside underneath it.
Yeah.
So most of us with the longer hair, if something is, you're going to flip your hair out, right? You're going to get it taut or whatever she's going to do. To have it like that, it seems unnatural. Again, if this is somebody doing this to themselves and they're not necessarily in their right mind to begin with, it just does not seem right, though, that she would have just left it there.
Well, it's almost like a reflex, isn't it? You put
Yeah.
something on, whether it be a jumper or a
Right.
necklace, you
Yeah.
just automatically do it without any second thought.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Well, not anymore because I cut too much hair off, but
I
that's
was going to say
another
I
story.
do it all the while.
Oh yeah, Jamie does it all the time. Everybody.
It just seems too far-fetched to believe that a woman would have done this to herself and not pulled her hair out from beneath the rope.
Yeah.
And I guess you would have to add that along with just the other things, the fact that her hands were bound behind her back, she had the gag in her mouth. It's just, there's too much here. And this is uncharacteristic of not only Rebecca, but anyone. Like I said, as we automatically, like anything around your neck, you're going to flip that hair out. Whether it's clothing impeding it, jewelry, it's just second nature to do it. So to believe that she did this to herself, it just doesn't quite add up. And it's another big question in the long list of questions and anomalies that have never been explained by the official narrative.
Exactly.
Mhm. As we've already alluded to several times, but we've not told you the official cause of death. After a 7-week investigation, Sheriff Bill Gore conducted a press conference on September the 2nd, 2011, in which he announced that the Sheriff's Office had reached conclusions in both deaths. He ruled that Max Shacknow's death was an accident and stated that Rebecca had died as a result of taking her own life, which just blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind. The evidence on scene and witness testimony, however, as you've just learned from everything we just showed you, contradicts the findings in her death completely, in my opinion. Her family and friends do not believe that she would have done this and that she would have taken her own life, especially under the circumstances that it was done, being bound, gagged, and naked.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca was from a Christian background, and this would not be something people who know her believe she would do, as it goes completely against her faith. Also, publicly displaying herself naked does not seem like something that any woman would do. We're now going to show you exactly what he said and whatever. We're going to show you a little video of that press conference before we move on to the next part of the story.
There's been a lot of speculation about this case. Normally, we wouldn't comment on an investigation of this nature. However, the intensity of the local, national, and even international media, coupled with the unique circumstances surrounding Rebecca's death, suggested otherwise, and that's why we're here this morning. Our responsibility is to answer one very important question. Were these deaths the result of criminal conduct? Was Max's death a homicide? The answer is no. It was a tragic accident. Was Rebecca's death a homicide? Again, the answer is no. It was a suicide. To reach these conclusions relied in substantial measure upon the physical evidence, the scene of each event, witness interviews, the medical evidence, and the forensic evidence, including DNA, fingerprints, and biomechanics. They are all compelling and all point persuasively to a single conclusion. These deaths were not the result of any criminal acts.
The family exhumed Rebecca's body, and a second autopsy was performed by renowned forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht, because they disagreed with the assertion that Rebecca had killed herself, just like we all do.
Yeah, don't blame them.
Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca's second autopsy raised even more suspicions. Although Dr. Wecht prefaced his statements by saying he found nothing wrong with the original findings, he did expand upon them. He gave his findings on the Dr. Phil show in November 2011. I'm really gutted that they just kept saying all these things on Dr. Phil's show instead of allowing us all to hear it.
To share it, yeah.
Share it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Stop going on Dr. Phil because we can't share the clips.
So there's something called the subgaleal hemorrhage. And Wecht describes 4 subgaleal hemorrhages under Rebecca's scalp, which suggests blunt force trauma to the head. Though this hemorrhaging was found in the initial autopsy, it seems to have been inexplicably dismissed by law enforcement. Go figure.
We're really good at dismissing things.
They are. They really are. These injuries would undoubtedly have caused a concussion or unconsciousness, the result of which would lead to immobility and would easily explain the lack of evidence of a struggle and clean toxicology report. With the second autopsy, Wecht was able to corroborate Colino's claim that Rebecca would have suffered more severe neck injuries had she fallen from such a height. Rebecca suffered fractures to the front structures of the neck, but no fractures in the back of the neck's vertebrae, something that would have been happening as a result of a hanging, according to Wecht. Ultimately, Wecht has grave and serious doubts about the conclusion that the manner of death was self-inflicted and tells Dr. Phil that he leans very strongly towards it being a homicide. He considers these findings sufficient to warrant a re-examination of the investigation and recommends changing Zahau's manner of death to undetermined in order to keep the case open, which sounds good to me, you know? It's the least that they should.
It doesn't sound like an unreasonable request, but it's like the sheriff's office are completely against this. They're determined.
They just want to wrap it up.
They just want it to go away. They
Yeah.
just want it to go away.
Yeah.
So the likelihood that Rebecca hit her head 4 separate times on the railing and the minimal amount of foliage beneath it whilst going over the railing is so minuscule that it is incalculable. Yet this is a narrative that we are all expected to believe. It's the entirety of the case that's troubling, and I think to write it off as self-inflicted is premature, said Dr. Lawrence Koblinski. This fellow right here. A DNA expert and forensic scientist who heads the Department of Sciences at the City University of New York's John Jay College of Criminal Justice. According to both Koblinski and Morris Godwin, the injuries as described in the autopsy report suggest that there was a substantial blow or blows to Rebecca's head, causing 4 separate hemorrhages.
Rebecca's sister Mary Zahau Lena and her husband Doug have been at the forefront of campaigning to get justice for Rebecca for over 10 years now.
It's sad that it's been that long.
That is, yeah. They vehemently believe that Rebecca was murdered and have fought in every way possible to get law enforcement to investigate her death and change the cause of death to homicide, and I agree. They hired attorneys and utilised the mainstream media by going on shows like Dr. Phil again to get Rebecca's story out, and even filed a civil suit for wrongful death against Adam Shacknai, Dina Shacknai, and Nina Romano, Dina's twin sister. Before the case went to civil court, the Sahau family lawyers dropped the case against the twin sisters and publicly apologized to them. However, this case did go ahead with Adam Shacknai as sole defendant.
So the civil case. In April of 2018, a California civil jury determined that Adam Shacknai was responsible for the death of Rebecca Zahau 7 years earlier. The family,
Sorry.
Woo, woo.
Well done.
You got to see some justice, right?
Yeah.
The family had filed the suit in 2013 asking for only $1. As for her, the family, it was never about money. They just wanted justice, right? So they said, all right, $1. But they wanted to prove that she had been murdered. Yeah. Jurors in the wrongful death trial determined that Adam Shacknai must pay Rebecca Zahau's family more than $5 million for the loss of her love and companionship. The jurors were tasked with answering 2 questions. Did Adam Shacknai touch Rebecca Zahau before her death with the intent to harm her? And did that touching cause the death of Rebecca Zahau? They voted yes to both.
Good.
At the plaintiff's table across the aisle, Rebecca's older sister, Mary Zahau Lehner, wiped away tears with tissues as her lawyer, Keith Greer, turned around to face her and the other members of the family and flashed 2 thumbs up. We did it, right?
Yeah.
And got him.
It's sad that it took until 2018 now. It's 7 years, and it's still years later. We're getting on to, 5 years now after that, and they've still not got such. Can you imagine if that was your family member and they were just trying to just make this go away? And it's not just about proving that she was murdered; it's about proving that she didn't do this.
Yes,
thing to herself.
Clearing her name.
Yeah.
There's no way. Anyway.
So Adam Shacknai. After the verdict in the civil trial, Adam Shacknai held a press conference.
Of course
he did. In which he came across as cold and aggressive, in my opinion. He referred to Rebecca Zahau's family as posers and said he had been exonerated by the police, which isn't exactly true, Adam Shacknai, because they never investigated her death as a homicide.
Right.
They were looking at it as a self-inflicted death from the moment you picked up that phone and put that into the lexicon.
Mm-hmm.
He said that they got lucky and that they won't get away with it again. This man has shown absolutely no remorse, no sorrow, and no compassion in the now, how many years is it? 12 years?
11, 12.
11, 12 years since her death.
Mm-hmm.
He comes across as arrogant the entire way through. He also claimed that nobody thinks he's guilty, even strangers. Considering he's just walked out of a court where 12 strangers told him that he was guilty. I don't know what delusion he is living in, but people do think he's guilty. Those 12 people thought he was guilty, and these 3, I can tell. I'm not even going to ask them. These 3 think that he's guilty of at least being there when somebody else did something.
Yeah.
He's never acknowledged from the moment that they discovered her body that the evidence does not point towards this being a suicide. He's never acknowledged that.
No.
And that in itself, from hearing that 911 call all those years ago when this case first happened, it just did not ring true to me at all, knowing what she was found like, the way that he found up and the girl here hung herself. He either did this, in my opinion, or he knows exactly who he did. And either way, he is complicit in her death. And we're going to play a little video of his statement so you can judge for yourself. I'm saying I think he come across as cold and aggressive. See for yourself and see what you think. This is what his attitude's been like the entire way through.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say this about, I've been living with, horrible false accusations. And yeah, they bother me, but I'll say this. The people I come in contact with, be it friends, co-workers, acquaintances, strangers. It's very gratifying to know that I've never come across one who thought for a second that I had anything to do with it. And yeah, it bothers me, but it doesn't bother anybody else because they know me and they see me for what I am.
In February 2019, a civil case against Adam Shacknoy was dismissed with prejudice, meaning it can never be refiled. This came after a settlement was made by Shacknoy's insurance company of an undisclosed amount. Paid him off, basically. We do know the family had previously rejected a $1 million offer, though.
So it had to be higher than that.
So you would expect that it was higher, yes. This does not negate the findings on the civil trial in which the jury found him responsible. It only negates the $5.1 million judgment.
Yeah, so he's still guilty. He just doesn't have to pay that much.
Yeah.
But he's paid something over $1 million, apparently. Well, his insurance company has. It's not cost him anything.
Right.
The sheriff's office was pressed and are still being pressed to reopen the case, but they are sticking to the narrative that Rebecca did this to herself because they just want to move on and it just won't go away, but they're determined. Adam was outraged at this settlement and said, I quote, "I wouldn't waste my time killing Rebecca Sahau. I never touched her."
That's a disgusting thing to say.
Whilst Rebecca's family attorney said that the family are not going to stop until Adam is behind bars for the murder, and I agree, because that is just so, that shows you how Karen, I mean, even if they've angered you, again, like the family or her is angered by taking you through the court process, that's very dismissive and disrespectful, and you should know that at least.
It's just like a complete narcissistic bullshit. I wouldn't waste my time killing Rebecca Zahau. It's like, she's not even worth my time.
Right.
So basically, you can assess that as him saying that he's willing to kill people, but he won't waste his time killing her, which is ridiculous anyway. But I mean, and he never touched her. Well, you made a good job of trying to make it look like you never touched her because there's no bloody fingerprints everywhere. You fiddled about with a rope, you played with a knife, you moved the table, all these different things, yet removed the gag, yet there's no print anywhere. No, I'm not buying it.
And I'm sorry, but like, I know we mentioned how the police just wanted this to all go away. I can't help but wonder, because money is the root of all evil. This was a very rich family. The Shacknoys, are they the ones that wanted to make this go away, and they helped pay for that to go away? I mean, I know it's a speculation. There's no proof of that, but rich families seem to tend to get away with a lot of things that nobody else would. I'll just leave it at that.
Money talks.
Yeah. The family wants access to the records, and they should have it. The Sahau family are not going to stop until Adam Shacknoy is behind bars, just like Jamie had mentioned. And they began a suit against the Sheriff Bill Gore now, in order to access records on the case. However, in July 2022, that case was dropped. The suit called for Gore to give Sahau's family and attorneys access to all records regarding the investigation, arguing that while the department had released many records, it only disclosed those that support the belief that Sahau's death was self-inflicted.
How convenient.
I know. It appears that the suit was dropped against Gore because he retired this year, and this family are now pursuing getting access to the records from the new sheriff. The family also wanted access to the instructions Gore gave the second team upon them reinvestigating Sahau's death after the civil trial. However, it appears that the evidence doesn't even exist because Gore never put anything in writing, which in itself is suspicious. They are now fighting to petition the medical examiner in his office so that they can at least change Rebecca's cause of death to either undetermined or homicide, as it should be. At the time of this recording, Rebecca's death is still officially ruled as self-inflicted, and her family are still fighting for justice.
Unfortunately, petitioning the medical examiner to change the cause of death, if they change it to undetermined, even homicide, you've still got to rely on that same sheriff's department to investigate it and do it properly, and they've not done that in the past 12 years.
I'm sorry, but you can see how a poor job that they've done. Straight away, we've spotted things what they've never even mentioned in their reports or in any of the evidence or any of their press conferences and things like that. There's so much going on. What they've just totally ignored. They've picked this witchcraft book, but ignored the internet searches and the table. Let's not question the table. If this table was already broken, why is the leg moving about with it? It's simple stuff like that, and that should be enough to say this has all got to be, this has got to be reinvestigated and redone, because that straight away is just not right. It's clear it's not right.
And then you have to even take this back to even just the beginning with poor young Max, who allegedly it was an accident and him falling over the staircase or the banister. Of course, anybody in their right mind, or even not in the right mind, they're going to be so distraught over that. And had Rebecca found him that way, as she alleged had said so, that just, the whole trauma of that would stick with her. However, to say that what she did was self-inflicted before she even knew the outcome, that he wasn't going to make it, and then to apparently write in a third person such a strange message. She saved him. Can you save her? What does that even mean?
Said that at the same time. It didn't even.
Who's it talking to? Is it talking to Jonah? Is it talking to,
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense, does it?
So somebody knows the truth in all of this, but it's evident that they weren't going to disclose it. And I don't know if it was just totally botched investigating or if it was purposely hidden.
Oh, it seems like it was done on purpose to me, because these people, they know what to do. They know that they need to collect all this evidence. And unfortunately, although the family does want justice, and they're not going to stop apparently until Adam Shacknight is behind bars, I wouldn't say Adam Shacknight. I would say whoever did it. It might have been more than one person. He's very suspicious, and there's a lot of suspiciousness around his place in this. But there could have very well been more than one person.
Right.
However, it does leave me wondering if they actually managed to get some detectives or police officers to investigate it properly now. Would the botched up investigation from the initial time and the failure to even put protective things on your boots, apparently, or to take all the evidence properly, or listen to the witness statements, would that just completely stuff up any criminal trial, no matter who's guilty, because the police didn't do anything properly and the evidence is stuffed up, basically? I'm trying not to swear. They've destroyed the case.
I think that's the trouble. I think they did a poor job, maybe deliberately. I think there's a lot of people who's conveniently at different and also at certain locations at certain times, went from one place to another when they didn't probably need to, like the coffee, the hospital and things like that.
Unfortunately, it leaves a reasonable doubt. So are you going to believe, for instance, that she didn't do this to herself when, like, take the book print, they're saying that was a police book print, but they never tested it, so that's a reasonable doubt, because it could be, but they didn't ever test it. So that's a reasonable doubt. So
Time.
Yeah, the time frame, changing the time of death to 3, so I hope our family do get justice at some point, and that the people responsible pay for what they did, because that girl's dead, and she did not do that to herself. And there's nothing in this world that's going to convince me otherwise. I'm sorry. No way.
Yeah,
no way.
I don't see it that way either. So it's very sad. God bless that little boy and Rebecca, and
not forgetting little Max. I mean, because none of this would have happened if, whether it was an accident or playing, or he tripped over the dog, or the dog maybe nudged him. That's because of everything that went on afterwards. There's a lot of doubt about that case as well.
Yeah,
I don't think we'll ever know the truth.
It's the loss of the little precious life there. So anyway, hopefully you stayed with us on this, and you enjoyed the episode and the first one as well. And we hope to see you come back and join us in future episodes. If you'd like to help support our new program here, you can visit us at thecuriouscasefiles.com/store, where you'll find some new and exciting merchandise that we're working on, and originals for sure. And also, please join us at thecuriouscasefiles.com/join so that you can become a member or a patron to help us with our endeavors and future mysteries and history and crime to bring to you and everyone else watching. So thank you.
All that's left to say, Danielle, is what?
We'll see you next Tuesday.
Indeed.
Yes, we certainly will. See you next Tuesday.
Thank you very much. According to his own deposition, he was in the guest house directly behind the main house. No. Also in the main
In
house.
the man house.
He was in the man house. We have a woman house and a man house.
Okay.
He was in the guest house directly
Yeah.
behind what? Oh, I'll start all again then. Right, whatever. According to his own disposition,
No,
that's why.
That's why he started there. He
That's
started,
why I
he
avoided
started
it.
just after deposition.
he
Thank
did it right
you.
the first time, Lisa. You messed him up.
I didn't realise till he said it wrong that that's the word he started after.
I was avoiding it like the plague. Right. However, according to the Sahau family attorney, more than a dozen searches of sexual content using terms like sexy Asian girls and bondage anime were accessed on the computer.
We can't say that word, can we?
Oh.
Just leave that. Wait a
However,
minute. I think I've got a splinter on my finger, so I'm just going to get it out.
Oh my gosh. How'd you get a splinter in your finger?
I don't know if I got it off the Kanifi. Right, go on then.
right, just yeah. Right. However, according to the Sahau family attorney, more than a dozen searches of sexual content using terms like sexy Asian girls.
What did I miss?
I always just think of like yeah.
Sexy, just because he felt
In my head,
he felt stupid saying
Austin
sexy.
Powers?
that's the word. Yeah, sexy.
He felt stupid saying the word
Sexy.
sexy.
Right.
Okay.
Right. However, according to the Sahau family attorney, more than a dozen searches of sexual content using terms like sexy Asian girls. I'm laughing. I can't be. That's so
He
inappropriate.
hates that
laughing.
word. He hates that word.
I feel so inappropriate laughing at that. Right.
Wait a minute, we all have to get
You can't even change the word. 'cause
Stop
that's
it,
the
Jamie.
word.
Okay.
You can't even change the word because you didn't search for something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to take this slide for you and you take the next one?
No, I'll be all right. I'll
Okay.
get there. If I fuck up this time, then you can.
Whatever.
Right.
Just
Right.
get it out.
But right, here we go. Right. However, according to the Sahau family attorney, more than a dozen searches of sexual content using terms like sexy Asian girls. I can't fucking do it. I can't do it. I cannot do it. I cannot do it. I can do it. I can do it.
Do you want me to do this slide? Do you want to try again? You can do it, Jamie. I know you can do it.
Using terms like Asian bondage anime, then.
No, he's got to include the sexy Asian girls.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Is that a challenge now?
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Don't look at the screen. Just look at that so you can't see me and Daniel.
Yeah, but then I'm saying the word sexy.
You sexy bitch, you.
Oh, right, here we go.
Girlfriend.
Dr. Sexy MD.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's what he's thinking. I
I'm
know.
thinking
I know.
an Asian chick.
He's thinking about Dr. Sexy MD.
From fucking Supernatural, or he's Asian.com. Right.
Wait a minute. There's something going on with my fucking fringe.
There's always something going on.
I know.
with
It's just
fringe.
fucking got a mind of its own.
We're not even at the 40th slide yet.
Yeah.
We are. Nearly.
Right.
I
On
think
the
I spoke
evening-
over you, Daniel.
Yeah.
What?
So where was Jonah again? Because Lisa spoke over.
I started speaking over you.
Fucking.
Cocksucking motherfucker.
Okay.
Can I slap myself?
She just got to get over slide 40.
yeah.
Yeah, get slide 40 then. Go.
All right.